Reading, reading from Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality Godhead, chapter number 44, the killing of Kamsa. After Kamsa's wrestlers expressed their determination, the Supreme Personality Godhead, the killer of Madhu, confronted Chanura, and Lord Balarama, son of Rohini, confronted Mustika. Krishna and Chanura, and then Balarama and Mustika locked themselves hand to hand, leg to leg, and each began to press against the other with a view to coming out a victorious. They joined palm to palm, calf to calf, head to head, chest to chest, and begin to strike each other. The fighting increased as they pushed each other from one place to another. One captured the other and threw him down on the ground, and another rushed from the back to the front of the other and tried to overcome him with a hold. The fighting increased step by step. There was picking up, dragging and pushing, and then the legs and hands were locked together. All the arts of wrestling were perfectly exhibited by the parties as each tried his best to defeat his opponent. But the audience in the wrestling arena was not very much satisfied because the combatants did not appear to be equally matched. They considered Krishna and Balarama to be mere boys before Chanura and Mustika, who were the strong wrestlers, as solid as stone. Being compassionate and favoring Krishna and Balarama, the many ladies in the audience began to talk as follows. Dear friends, there is injustice here. Another said, even in front of the king, this wrestling is going on between incompatible sides. The ladies had lost their sense of enjoyment. They could not encourage the fighting between the strong and the weak. Mustika and Chanura are just like thunderbolts, as strong as great mountains, and Krishna and Balarama are two delicate boys of very tender age. The principle of justice has already left this assembly. Persons who are aware of the civilized principle of justice will not remain to watch this unfair match. Those taking part in watching this wrestling match are not very much enlightened. Therefore, whether to speak or remain silent, they are being subjected to reactions of sinful activities. But my dear friends, another lady in the assembly spoke out. Just look at the face of Krishna. There are drops of perspiration on his face from chasing his enemy, and his face appears like a lotus flower with drops of water. Another lady said, don't you see how the face of the Lord Balarama has turned especially beautiful? There is a reddish hue on his white face because he is engaged in a strenuous wrestling match with Mustika. Another lady in the assembly addressed her friend, dear friend, just imagine how fortunate is the land of Vrindavana, where the Supreme Personality Godhead himself is present, always decorated with flower garlands and engaged in tending cows along with his brother Balarama, Lord Balarama. He is always accompanied by his coward boyfriends, and he plays his transcendental flute. The residents of Vrindavana are fortunate to be able to constantly see the lotus feet of Krishna and Balarama, which are worshipped by great demigods like Lord Shiva and by the goddess of fortune. We cannot estimate how many pious activities were executed by the damsels of Braja Bhumi so that they were able to enjoy the Supreme Personality Godhead by looking upon the unparalleled beauty of his transcendental body. The beauty of the Lord is beyond compare. No one is higher than or equal to him in beauty of complexion or bodily luster. Krishna and Balarama are the reservoir of all kinds of opulence, namely wealth, strength, beauty, fame, knowledge, and renunciation. The gopis are so fortunate that they can see and think of Krishna 24 hours a day, beginning from their milking the cows or husking the paddy or churning the butter in the morning, while engaged in cleaning their houses and washing their floors. They are always absorbed in thought of Krishna. The gopis give a perfect example of how one can execute Krishna consciousness even while performing various types of material engagements. By constantly being absorbed in the thought of Krishna, one cannot be affected by the contamination of material activities. The gopis therefore are perfectly in trance samadhi, the highest perfectional stage of mystic power. In the Bhagavad Gita it is confirmed that one who is constantly thinking of Krishna is a first class yogi. Among all kinds of yogis, my dear friends, one lady told mother, we must accept the activities of the gopis to be the highest form of piety. Otherwise, how could they have achieved the opportunity of seeing Krishna both morning and evening? In the morning when he goes to the pasturing ground with his cows and coward boyfriends, and in the evening when he returns with them. playing on his flute and smiling very brilliantly. And Lord Krishna, the super soul of every living being, understood that the ladies in the assembly were anxious for him. He decided not to continue wrestling but to kill the wrestlers immediately. The parents of Krishna and Balarama, namely Nanda Maharaja, Yashoda, Vasudeva and Devaki, were also very anxious because they did not know the unlimited strength of their children. Lord Balarama was fighting with the wrestler Mustika in the same way that Krishna, the Supreme Person of Godhead, was fighting and wrestling with Chanura. Lord Krishna appeared to be cruel to Chanura and he immediately struck him thrice with his fist. The great wrestler was jolted to the astonishment of the audience. Chanura then took his last chance and attacked Krishna just as one hawk swoops upon another. Holding his two hands, he began to strike the chest of Krishna, but Lord Krishna was not even slightly disturbed, any more than an elephant is when hit by a flower garland. Krishna quickly caught the two hands of Chanura and began to wheel him around. And simply by this centrifugal action, Chanura lost his life. Krishna then threw him to the ground. Chanura fell just like the flag of Indra, and all his nicely fashioned ornaments were scattered hither and thither. Mustika also struck Balarama, and Balarama returned the strike with great force. Mustika began to tremble and vomit blood. Distressed, he gave up his vital force and fell down just as a tree falls down in a hurricane. After the two wrestlers were killed, a wrestler named Kuta came forward. Lord Balarama immediately caught him in his left hand and killed him nonchalantly. A wrestler in the name of Shala came forward and Krishna immediately cracked his head with a kick. A wrestler named Toshala came forward and was killed in the same way. Thus all the great wrestlers were killed by Krishna and Balarama, and the remaining wrestlers fled from the assembly out of fear for their lives. All the coward boyfriends of Krishna and Balarama approached them and congratulated them with great pleasure. While trumpets resounded and drums were beaten, and the leg bells on the feet of Krishna and Balarama tinkled. All the people gathered there began to clap in great ecstasy, and no one could estimate the bounds of their pleasure. The Brahmanas present began to praise Krishna and Balarama ecstatically. Only Kamsa was morose. He neither clapped nor offered benediction to Krishna. Kamsa resented that the trumpets and drums should be played for Krishna's victory, and he was very sorry that the wrestlers had been killed and he had fled the assembly. He therefore immediately ordered the band to stop playing and addressed his men as follows: I order that these two sons of Vasudeva be immediately driven out of Badura. The coward boys who have come with them should be plundered and all their riches taken away. Nanda Maharaja should immediately be arrested and killed for his cunning behavior. That rascal Vasudeva should also be killed without delay. Also my father Ugrasena, who has always supported my enemies against my will, should be killed. When Kamsa spoke in this way, Lord Krishna became very angry with him, and within a second he jumped onto the high dais of King Kamsa. Kamsa was prepared for Krishna's attack, for he knew from the beginning that Krishna was to be the supreme cause of his death. Kamsa immediately unsheathed his sword and prepared to answer the challenge of Krishna with sword and shield. As Kamsa wielded his sword up and down, hither and thither, Lord Krishna, the supreme powerful Lord, caught hold of him with great force. Supreme Person, the Godhead, who is the shelter of the complete creation and from whose lotus navel the whole creation is manifested, immediately knocked the crown from the head of Kamsa and grabbed his long hair in his hand. He then dragged Kamsa from his seat to the wrestling dais and threw him down. Then Krishna at once straddled his chest and began to strike him over and again. Simply for the strokes of Krishna's fist, Kamsa lost his vital force. To assure his parents that Kamsa was dead, Lord Krishna dragged him just as a lion drags an elephant after killing it. When people saw this, there was a great roaring sound from all sides as soon as some spectators expressed their jubilation and others cried in lamentation. From the day Kamsa had heard he would be killed by the eighth son of Devaki, he was always thinking of Krishna with his wheel in hand. And because he was very much afraid of his death, he was thinking of Krishna in that form 24 hours a day without stopping, even while eating, while walking, and while breathing. And naturally he got the blessings of liberation. In the Bhagavad Gita it is stated, Sada tad bhava bhavitaha, a person gets his next life according to thoughts in which he is always absorbed. Kamsa was thinking of Krishna with his wheel, which means Narayana, who holds a wheel, conch shell, lotus flower and club. According to the opinion of authorities, Kamsa attained Sarupya Mukti after death. That is to say, he attained the same form as Narayana, Vishnu on the Vaikuntha planets. All the inhabitants have the same bodily features as Narayana. After his death, Kamsa attained liberation and was promoted to Vaikuntha Loka. From this instance, we can understand that even a person who thinks of the personality of Supreme Personality Godhead as an enemy gets liberation or a place in a Vaikuntha planet. So what to speak of the pure devotees who are always absorbed in favorable thoughts of Krishna? Even an enemy killed by Krishna gets liberation and is placed in the impersonal Brahma Jyotir. Since the Supreme Personal Godhead is all good, anyone thinking of him either as an enemy or as a friend gets liberation. But the liberation of the devotee and the liberation of the enemy are not the same. The enemy generally gets the liberation of Sayujya and sometimes he gets Sarupya liberation. Kamsa had 8 brothers headed by Kanka, all of them younger than he, and when they learned that their elder brother had been killed, they combined together and rushed toward Krishna in great anger to kill him. Kamsa and his brothers were all Krishna's maternal uncles, brothers of Krishna's mother, Devaki. When Krishna killed Kamsa, he killed his maternal uncle, which is against the regulations of Vedic injunctions. Although Krishna is independent of all Vedic injunctions, he violates the Vedic injunctions only in inevitable cases. Kamsa could not be killed by anyone but Krishna. Therefore, Krishna was obliged to kill him. But as far as Kamsa's 8 brothers were concerned, Balarama took charge of killing them. Balarama's mother Rohini, although the wife of Vasudeva, was not the sister of Kamsa, therefore Balarama took charge of killing all of Kamsa's 8 brothers. He immediately took up an available weapon, most probably the elephant's tusk which he carried, and killed the 8 brothers one after another, just as a lion kills a flock of deer. Krishna and Balarama thus verified the statement that the Supreme Person Godhead appears in order to give protection to the pious and to kill the impious demons, who are always enemies of the demigods. The demigods from the higher planetary systems showered flowers congratulating Krishna and Balarama. Among the demigods were powerful personalities like Lord Balaram, Brahma and Shiva, and all joined together in showing their jubilation over Kamsa's death. There were beating of drums and showering of flowers from the heavenly planets, and the wives of the demigods danced in ecstasy. The wives of Kamsa and his 8 brothers were aggrieved at the sudden death of their husbands, and all of them struck their foreheads and shed torrents of tears, crying loudly and embracing the bodies of their husbands, which lay on the wrestling dais. The wives of Kamsa and his brothers lamented, addressing the dead bodies, "Our dear husbands, you are so kind and are the protectors of your dependents. Now, after your death, we are also dead. Along with your homes and children, we no longer look auspicious. On account of your death, the auspicious functions to take place, such as the sacrifice of the bow, have all been spoiled. Our dear husbands, you treated persons ill who were faultless, and as a result you have been killed. This is inevitable because a person who torments an innocent person must be punished by the laws of nature. We know that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personal Godhead. He is the Supreme Master and Supreme Enjoyer of everything. Therefore, one who neglects his authority can never be happy, and ultimately, as you have, he meets death. Since Krishna was kind and affectionate to his aunts, he solaced them as far as possible. The ritualistic ceremonies performed after death were then conducted under the personal supervision of Krishna because he happened to be the nephew of all the dead princes. After finishing this business, Krishna and Balarama immediately released their father and mother Vasudeva and Devaki, who had been imprisoned by Kamsa. Krishna and Balarama fell at their parents' feet and offered them prayers. Vasudeva and Devaki had suffered so much trouble from Kamsa because Krishna was their son. Devaki and Vasudeva were fully conscious of Krishna's exalted position as Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, although Krishna touched their feet and offered them obeisances and prayers, they did not embrace him but simply stood up to hear the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Krishna was born as their son, Vasudeva and Devaki were always conscious of his position.